G'day guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. Tonight I'm going to be doing a movie review. This is an American drama. It's actually retelling the story of the director of this film. He actually went through the real life tragedy of the Columbine High School massacre. So this is a retelling of how he coped with such a horror. So it's released in the year 2009, directed by Andrew Robinson, and this is called April Showers. So this is based around the Columbine High School massacre. The director was a real survivor, and it's pretty much just documenting how his life was after such a terrible tragedy. So the story to this one is as follows. From writer-director Andrew Robinson, a survivor of the Columbine High School tragedy, comes April Showers, a dramatised retelling of what it's like to be a survivor in the midst of the USA's largest school shootings. Based on actual events, April Showers follows the story of Sean Ryan, as he and fellow survivors attempt to make sense of the horrors they've just witnessed, and for Sean, coping with the loss of his friend April. So the main characters, Sean and April, they are friends, and there is a strong romance between the two. At the start of the movie, the massacre takes place, and basically the whole movie is the survivors trying to cope and come to terms with this horror that's just happened. And for Sean, it's coping with the loss of April, because she in fact actually died in the massacre. So that's not giving away anything, and that's basically what the basis of the story is about. It's about, coping with grief and post-traumatic stress, and how some people become stronger from such experiences, and how some other people just self-destruct. So it really is a psychological drama, and that's as far as I'm going with the synopsis. So if you want to know more, then I would recommend you go out there and have a look at this film for yourself. Now, my thoughts on the movie. Straight away, I have a lot of admiration for Andrew Robinson. He went through such a tragedy, such a horrific event in his life, and he had the courage to retell his story, to relive memories. And I actually felt that bringing up this, it really did document the fact that he was doing this for very good intentions. He wanted to throw it out there, what it's like to cope in such a tragedy. And, it's not only coping with the tragedy in the school shootings, but it's basically coping with anything that is stressful, whether it's a loss of a family member or whatever. It's basically how some people cope with traumatic events, and how it affects different people in different ways. So for that reason, I really like the fact that he actually had the courage to actually come up with something like this and basically throw it out there and tell people that, he wasn't, an Iron Man. He had his, moments of, trauma, and he wasn't afraid to admit that. So for that reason, I really think that the movie shows what kind of person Andrew Robinson is. Now, other things to like about the movie, there are a few positives in the film. One being that nothing is glorified. Now, a lot of these sorts of films, they kind of glorify the murderers, and it makes it more into a horror film rather than a powerful drama. This movie steers clear of that. There is no overuse of violence. You don't get to see actually any impact in the violence, so it pays tribute to the victims. It stays very respectful, and at the same time it doesn't glorify the shooters. So I actually felt that the movie was made for the right reasons. It was made with a hell of a lot of respect. So for that, once again, a lot of admiration for the director. He could have easily made this to appeal to a horror audience. He could have easily made it gory, but, he paid a lot of respect, and for that, it tells you a lot about the person that he is. Cinematography, very good. Low-budget film, but for a low-budget movie, he actually demonstrates some pretty crafty techniques, and the acting isn't overdone. For a low-budget movie, this is actually above average as far as acting is concerned. So, they portrayed some fairly interesting characters with what they had. Their emotions were very realistic, so the acting was, surprisingly fairly decent. Unfortunately, though, the movie does fall very hard with its biggest problem, and the biggest problem is the lack of character development. Now, sometimes when you see a tragic event happen over on the other side of the world, it happens so far away from you that while you say, you think to yourself that was horrific, it doesn't really have an impact on you because it doesn't affect you or your friends directly. So although you can be horrified by what's happened, there is no impact as opposed to someone who's actually gone through this tragedy. So for a director, he'll know what it's like to go through this, but for a viewer, you don't get the strong impact that the director had because of the fact you don't get a connection with the characters. Now, the problem with this, the biggest issue that it had was the fact that the massacre happens straight away, and then we go into the story of grief. Whereas I felt that if the massacre happened at least halfway through, it would have given the movie a chance to get some character development, so you could build a connection with the characters, so when the tragedy happens, it felt like you lost a friend as well. And that's why, I compare it to, you're hearing something over the other side of the world that doesn't affect you personally. It is shocking, but it just doesn't, you don't know the people, you don't know whether they're likable or unlikable. So that's exactly the same feeling I got for the film. I just didn't know the characters, therefore it didn't have that much of an impact on me. So I just felt that it was a little bit of inexperience for the director. I felt that he ran out of patience a little bit. You're expected to get a lot of sympathy for this, but basically after the massacre, which happens about 5 minutes in, it's basically just set pieces of grief. People crying, people reciting poems, which is all, it's all emotional enough, but you just don't get that extra bit of emotion because you just cannot make that connection. Now, Sean and April, they were the main focus, whereas I actually felt that the main focus should have been on the more interesting character, which actually was the red-headed guy with post-traumatic stress. I felt that he was the more believable. And Sean and April, being the main focus, you just don't know enough about them, so you don't get the chemistry between them, and you feel that it's a little bit forced. So while the actors did a good job, they just didn't have too much to play with as far as depth is concerned. They all did a good job at showing emotion, but as I said, you just don't get that connection with them that would make it, just that little extra bit that would have actually made it a very good movie. So it all ends with you thinking about these sort of situations, about grief, which is good. I actually felt that the director kind of achieved what he set out to, but just with a little bit more experience, a little bit more attention to detail, it could have been a really, really good film. I'm only going to give it a 2 out of 5 just because of the cardboard cutouts and that the majority of the film didn't work, but I do admire the fact that the director had enough courage to make a film like this, and for that reason I am going to say definitely go out there and see it. It is recommended. However, the 2 out of 5, it seems like a very harsh score, but it is a score I'm giving it because, on the surface it is a good film, but for depth and for what the film needed, it just didn't deliver. So 2 out of 5 for April Showers. However, having said that, I'm still going to say go out there and see it because I do feel, it's an important film, and any director who has enough courage to relive these horrific memories deserves, for you to go out there and support him. So that's my review for April Showers. A decent sort of film, but definitely nothing great. Alright guys, that's my review. I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.